Dear students, how are you? I was thinking today of taking you actually through the things we have done today in the tutorial on campus. We do have a class online on Friday, 11th of March, but I thought as long as I remember what happened on campus, I might share it with you. And then maybe on Friday, as we meet on the Collaborate, we could actually discuss the things you might get from this tutorial rather than actually reinvent the wheel once again. So I have to say the class went well today, but it was a little bit uphill because that's what learning is about, obviously, but also because we were looking at the curriculum with a bit of a different eye, maybe a critical eye, or yes, slightly differently. So anyway, how did we find the curriculum? Now, before I do that, I just would like to make sure that students whose interest area is children, so they will work with children from 0 to 5 and would like to use the early years learning framework as their reference, by all means please do, because the point really is that whether you use the Australian curriculum, which is from, at least in Darwin, from 5 years onward, or whether you use early years learning framework, in both cases, you actually will need to articulate for the purpose of ELA 200 how you actually work or navigate the relationship between the higher order thinking skills and the greater detail, which is included in the curriculum or articulated in the framework itself as well. So that's that kind of interaction that we are looking at in ELA 200. So the way we went to look for the curriculum, there are 3,000 different ways to do it. I went to the module 1. You might have all seen it. And we scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and got worried it might not be there, but it was there. So we clicked on the language, literature and literacy link, right? And we found the curriculum. So here it is. You will see that that the screen captures just parts of the page. As it is, it's quite a large capture, which means that this video will take 3 years to actually upload on YouTube, but that's okay. We have time. So I strongly urge you to actually watch Professor Peter Freebody talking about the curriculum and about this trend. He was obviously the key person behind the curriculum, and as I mentioned last week, the curriculum is actually a patchwork of a lot of compromises, to the point that I understand Professor Freebody at some stage might have felt a bit impatient with the way it was going. Nevertheless, there's a lot of good things in the curriculum, and other things are a bit more of a compromise that probably he or I would like to say. Nevertheless, if you listen to Professor Freebody's video clip, you'll find out that what he's really after is not where your students will learn to put the comma, or how your students will learn to um, spell this word or another difficult word, or what he's saying really here is that we want intelligent people. He's not really interested what we're doing. He actually says, do whatever it takes to have intelligent people. That's why he's talking about a form of translation between, year 1 or early years and say year 12, that there is some form of continuity. And as I will be stressing in this ELA 200 unit, that continuity is provided by your intellectual frameworks, which I will teach you, and also through the reference to the cross-curriculum priorities and general capabilities, right? So as I hear from other colleagues of mine, these capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities are not always stressed enough in units. This is the only literacy unit in, pardon me, which actually focuses on pedagogy exclusively. So this is our chance to actually see how all of this relates. So in class, what did we do? We looked at aims. So there you can read it for yourselves, then key ideas. I can't capture them all here, but you can actually scroll through this yourselves and actually see what's in here. And then we looked at the structure. And I am not able to capture the structure the way I would like to do, but I'll just try my best how to manipulate the screen for it to appear on your video as good as I want it to be. Okay, so what you see in the structure, we have here the strand of language, literature, and literacy. What I will be teaching you in this little video, and also especially tomorrow, is how to actually work with all these words here. It is frequently said by people who, in my view, can't read the curriculum well, that the Australian curriculum is overloaded. This is actually not true. It's actually underloaded, and we have actually seen it today in our class. So I will show you how to work with these constructs here so that you don't feel overburdened, and yet you can actually make sense out of the relationships which they describe. Obviously, the way we are working today with the Australian curriculum is to assist you in thinking about assignment 1. Right? So we will use terms from the Australian curriculum in order to actually, as a framework, as a framework against which we can actually evaluate our own literacy skills. Right? So when you go to school, you will be assessing kids, and this is our chance to be a little bit honest and assess ourselves. Right, I might just go now to where we were in class, so I do not get too focus on different tangents. So as you noticed in the announcements, I have produced a number of things for you. So one thing I did, I tried to actually produce a little help file for you to see how you could actually find yourselves with assignment 1 and how you could actually respond to its questions. So please read through it. I noticed on the discussion board many of you have read it, except that now what we need to do is, rather than, we have all our ideas now on the discussion board, right? So we've written what our heart and our head knew, and I strongly suggest also you start actually putting things, your comments, on a blog or on the website, which is your portfolio, and then on the discussion board, share only the link, right? So you can actually build up your portfolio, no longer typing into the discussion board, but now typing into your website, and you will be polishing your assignment answers as you go through these weeks with me. So other people will be commenting on your text after they actually clicked on your link and checked your portfolio, not necessarily always in the discussion board. It just is a shortcut and you don't have to type twice. Anyway, so this is something you will notice that what I'm writing here in this little help file for you is to stress that academic writing is about a skill. It's a exercise in coherence. So, for example, and I'm not requiring from you to actually control this skill at this stage of your career, but certainly I want you to be aware of it And as you engage more and more in your professional life, and when you are required to write reports or required to write text, that you remember it's an exercise in coherence. And here it goes. And that's very hard. It's very hard for me. It's very hard for anyone who actually tries to write. No matter what claims we make about our wonderful literacy capabilities, life challenges us every time. So here it is. If you actually, in your assignments, write for me examples, right? Here are the examples. What I will be looking at is how these examples actually talk to the concept of literacy that you claim your examples are actually reflecting. This is very important because I have taught this unit for a few years now, and I've noticed that a number of times students say literacy is blah, but the examples are bleep, 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 bleep. Completely different language, completely unrelated to the concept of literacy that the person presented. Now, the reason for it is that very often students see each of these questions as unrelated. And I understand it. I've been there and I've done it myself. I mean, before I got where I am today, I certainly was once an undergraduate student. And I feel with you, I am there, but I'm teaching you something so that maybe you actually get out of that rut and start actually, thinking about writing differently. So the definition of literacy actually is important because it commits you to a particular perspective on your practice as a literacy teacher. That's why we ask you to actually insert it right at the start of your assignment, not at the end, right? Because whatever you say that literacy is, then I will want to say your examples and also the relationships that you create through capabilities and cross-curriculum priorities. I want all of this to relate to the concept of literacy that you have actually given me. So that's what I wanted to say about this, and you can read the rest of this little document. So today we came to class and our life was never the same, so to speak. So we have this drawing here again. So I wrote these things sort of as a help for my students in order to explicate what actually the capabilities are about. So as I explained in the lecture from week 1, the capabilities are really about values. So what the capabilities focus you on are particular ways of thinking about the context in which you actually practice your literacy communications. So for example, the social and the personal capabilities are actually inviting you to think about your audiences and your place in those engagements with your audiences. Who are the people you're talking to and who are you in that context? So as you navigate that understanding about your audiences and about your role in that context with the audiences, you actually learn something about yourself and about those people, right? So you might think, how do I learn? Well, when you are today in some situation where you actually have to act, whether by using your oral literacy or whether using your writing skills, you just say and do things on the basis of whatever you know. But in a school context, we don't let our students loose instantly on people and on context where they actually don't know how to be. So what we will do in schools, we want our students in schools to first stop, think, right? Reflect who their audiences are, reflect on their role that they play as the interlocutor with those audiences. So we will be supporting them in navigating this relationship between themselves and selves. Right? So that's the social and personal capability. Who are your interlocutors, and who are you in that context too? The critical the ethical intercultural capabilities invite you to actually reflect on the ways, or more precisely on the frameworks that inform you how you actually think of your audiences, right? What understandings about the world do you draw on as you make your as you construct your beliefs about your audiences? So what understandings, sorry for the misspelling, do you draw on as you develop your ideas about the audiences or your interlocutor? Just correct this one here, that gives you time to think. And critical and creative is actually the range of understandings on which you build. Understandings, right? It will never be right. Okay. So basically here, who are you talking to, right? And who are you in that context? What understandings do you draw on as you develop your ideas? And what is the range of the understandings or of the frames of reference on which you actually build this picture, right? The range. What is your range? Very important. Range is important. So that's that, right? That's the little introduction here. So we've done that, and we've done other things today, and I'll show you what we did. But what I want you to do is also look at this framework that I created with Amy Cash from Perhaps School. Here it is a little bit, I don't think that I can, okay, so it's here on one page. It's not fully fitting in the screen because it's hard. So I just might do that. Okay, so I can see it here better, and I'll just push it back. All right, so we will use this framework later on, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but I want you to actually make yourselves familiar with it and see how it actually might be of use to you one day. But today we didn't look at it at all. But we looked at this. Now look at this. What we are having here is an interesting framework, right? So maybe what I might do is insert a row below, put indigenous here. You have here explanations. And today what we did in class was as follows. We were trying to actually in class to start to describe our own literacy profile. And we wanted to map it on this structure, where on the left we have the cross-curriculum priorities, which is the indigenous link, so histories and culture and knowledges. What we had here, communities and sustainable living, and the Asian connection. And then here on the top we put the general capabilities. And the question was, how can we talk about literacy activities that we're currently engaging in if we were to map the discussion against the priorities and capabilities, right? So instantly there was silence. You know how we say that we'll come to classroom and we have an engaged classroom and everybody will be raising their hands in the air and trying to give the answer. Well, that's not what happens when you have an inquiry-based learning. People need to think, people need to explore, and it's not always just a happy hands up. So there. I am not sure, but I can actually reflect what happened in the classroom but I can actually today reflect very well what happened in the classroom, but I will try to do my best and tomorrow we will follow it up. So we looked at the first two tasks of the literacy portfolio. The first one was what is literacy, and then what literacy practices do you currently engage with regularly and how. Okay, we have very quickly found out that if we were to respond to this question in a way that actually allows us to address the the Australian curriculum outcomes, that would take more than the entire word count in the assignment. So at this very moment, we just thought we might start with one activity. Actually, we didn't think this way. We actually concluded that that's what's going to happen. But, you know, that's a pretty good summary of what happened, right? So we were thinking, well, maybe one will do, but one described well. So I'll just do something here. So regarding the question, what is literacy? One of the students actually instantly, quite well, I like when this happens, repeated what I was saying last week, that everything, whether it's learning or literacy, everything is about information management. Well, so another student said, so okay, if it is about information management, my question was then, well, why are we managing this information? Why are we managing this information? So these things here, informed or filtered, they came up as more or less synonyms to information management. So why are we managing information? Right? So you will see probably from other YouTube videos that I have produced for you that I talk a lot about purpose or desired impact, right? So you probably would have seen it there. So whether we listen to something or whether we read something or whether we actually write something, whatever it is we do it with a particular purpose in mind. We never actually just read. Nobody just listens and nobody just reads a book. You read a book because you have a purpose and you want that purpose to be satisfied, right? If the purpose is not satisfied, you throw away the book and you take another, or you cross out your writing and you actually restart again. So I talk here about the desired impact, right? And that's very important because then later on you will find out in assignment 2 what we want students is not to just write and write things they don't relate to or they have no stakes in. We want children to actually explore the impact of their text. What is it that they actually want to achieve with their text? And then we also will engage with them in activities that will enable them to assess whether this is the right way to do it. But I'm just preempting it a little bit. Okay, so one of our students said, well, maybe imagine this is all empty. Nothing is here, right? Nothing, I mean, like I could just cover it. So nothing was here and nothing was here, right? And maybe that would have been a healthy way for me to do it now, to cover it. But here we went. So the student said, well, I read books to my daughter. And then I said, okay, well, if you want to be consistent with that, because that's basically where it ended up. I read books to my daughter. And I'm trying to teach my students that as I just said, everything is purpose oriented. You don't read just text to your child. You do it for a purpose. Well, then she said maybe to educate her, to pass knowledge, to entertain, right? That's really nice. These are tools that later on, when you will want your students to actually create text, you have tools now that text do different things. Text to educate, to pass knowledge to entertain, right? These are important things. So we did that. So we looked at that. The next thing we looked at was, imagine all of this was white. There was nothing in here, right? So we were thinking, I was thinking, so that's it. And what's next will we write? So the student didn't know. So imagine we have this, at this very moment, that's what it looked like. Where is our other text? That's where we were. It wasn't even indigenous link. It was actually here because the students decided that if I read text, books to my daughter, then it's a community building, right? You want actually your child to be part of a community to which you belong. So through text, you actually socialize the child. So we put it here, but then we had nothing here, nothing anywhere. So of course, our students thought, okay, we've done that, then we can move to the next link, to the next sort of activity. But as I was teaching us, when you have a model like this, you don't just jump from activity to activity. This is a methodology of thinking. That map here, it's a methodology of thinking, and it asks you, can you now look at this activity critically and see what can you squeeze out from the activity of I read books to my daughter? What can you squeeze out of it? I was trying to make it bold, but ain't gonna happen. So what can you squeeze out of it that can actually respond to all these other capabilities, might even inform this capability more, and maybe those other priorities? It's a map. So let's actually explore our little statement in relation to all the other parameters so that we can actually critically explore the concept of reading books to children. That's interesting, isn't it? It was painful and it took us 2 hours, but I'll just take you through it quickly. So I'll just take you as we went, so you don't have to, I see how I can do that. Right, so we've covered that. So the next thing we did was the student said, I identify texts that have some ethical meaning. And of course, the student instantly wanted to put it into the ethics here, ethical and intercultural. But it landed here. Just landed here, which was amazing, right? Why do we have the word ethical in here? So she identifies texts that have, so in order for children to pass knowledge, to educate them, to entertain them even, so she identifies texts, she selects texts for with a particular message. So the way it landed, the reason why it landed in critical and creative, because creative and critical are about the range. What kind of range of text, frames of reference, what kind you bring into the context of your decision making about how you will act. And then this range, of course, informs your understandings about your audiences, right? So the range provides you with some cultural insights about your audiences. So she identifies text, which means she identifies frames of reference that will have an impact here. So what impact did they have? She says it wasn't just one student, I just say she, but we all worked at it. She discusses so she uses particular texts, but then on the basis of those texts, she has the possibility to discuss I'll just have to read it. To discuss these texts in relation to the child's life. And then I asked, okay, so what's the relationship of this to child's life? So you build now cultural understandings of your student, of your child, about his community or her community, right? Which is this. So you have these texts, you want them to draw relationships to their life, but how are they gonna do that? In order to construct relationships, they have to construct. They need building tools. They need, you don't construct from empty air. You need tools. So the student at this very moment was saying, I want my child to draw on her own experiences. Well, yes, that's desirable, but we are not in the business of reinforcing what students know, but we are in the business of expanding what students know, right? Or our children. We don't use a book to relate to what they know. What about if they don't remember? I mean, student is not a computer where you click and files pop out. And you know that even with the computer, if you click on the wrong folder, or only a few things pop out, not all of the things. And the child is not even that. So in a given moment, the child might be making very narrow inferences. And also, when the student draws inferences by referring to her or his own experiences, that's not yet a challenge, right? There's no challenge here. There's no expansion. This is just basically saying, so how do you feel about swimming? I hate swimming. Have you swum in your life? Yeah, once. I almost drowned. I know that's wonderful. But swimming is not that life-threatening in the sense that you can have your opinion and live with or without it. But when you actually are with people and the way you are, it is life-threatening. It's a difference between having a job and not having a job. Right? The way we write, the way we talk, all of that. Okay. All right, so the student got tired. So a few other students pop in with help and they say, okay, so what we might do is actually ensure that the texts don't only have a moral, but they also allow us to consider diverse perspectives and diverse ways of understanding the world and different values. Well, that's new. We went even further and we were thinking of exposing children to the same story, but written from the perspective of different cultures, so still in English. But what happens when some stories, even though they're English stories, but are either on YouTube presented by, say, the Vietnamese or by indigenous people and so on, they kind of sound different, they have different rhythm, they have also different symbols, different colors. Well, that's very interesting, and sometimes the moral gets a little bit different, right? They kind of, so basically different symbols, and sometimes the moral is a little bit is reference. It has different utilizes different frames of reference. So nothing wrong with using children's Chinese stories, Indian stories, and for that matter, we might actually make a here. I didn't do. We have actually eliminated all these. What do you call them? The boundaries here, and we actually started to respond to use all of these 3 priorities and respond to them all in here. So what we could do is actually have Indian, Chinese, European stories, like the La Fontaine fables, and we could also have indigenous stories. Oh my goodness, we could. Now, what I also said to our students, we're creating a map of an interesting teacher's life, right? It's important to have our students really engaged in all of that in their study. But trust me, first and most of all, what's important that you actually have a life as you teach it. So it's important that when you actually try to unravel its little activity, like I read books to children or with children, when you actually unravel what's important, what is actually contained in that, seemingly simple activity, what happens, as you will be learning throughout this semester, that there is so much richness in a little activity of this kind that you will love the kinds of learning activities that all of this will generate. But that's week 9. So let's stick to this one here where we are. So we have now different stories. We can present them through movies. We can present them actually through drawings. Oh my God. So where does this, okay, so different sources of information, different representations. We can also use those international stories in order to give students access to different ways of working with symbols and presenting meaning. And actually, what an exploration, right? What an exploration. Mind you, when we were actually doing all this work, now and then we were popping back into here and trying to pick any of those things and check where we can actually include any of those outcomes. So instantly you can see that what I was creating is a structure whereby we didn't actually treat any of those outcomes as an outcome per lesson for a lesson. Because how will you teach language variation and change? Will you construct a whole lesson around it? It will be meaningless. It will be meaningless. In and of itself, it will be something like a little curiosity and kids will forget about it. But look at this. When we actually, some of the text that we select for students will be using different varieties of English, whether spoken or written. That would be very interesting, would it not? So students are no longer exposed to the Queen's English, but what they do, they learn about different accents. So there could be stories with Indian accents, or there will be stories written in indigenous versions of English or dialects of all versions of English. Automatically, by doing this, we validate the Indian mother, the Polish mother who comes to the school with her daughter and speaks funny, right? I speak funny. But if you make room for accents, and if you make room for different versions of English, then all of a sudden, it's no longer weird. It's just different. The reason why I'm saying this, and we will be actually moving into this in here when we discuss it, is this is not about political correctness. This is not about being good, like hug your migrant sort of thing, like some people laugh at that kind of, how people still hug trees, now hug your migrant, No, nothing to do with that. What it is that actually the reason why I'm here and the reason why many actually Australian people and Anglo people are actually in Poland, and in Poland we have a lot of Chinese, and in China they have a lot of Polish people. The idea that we live in unitary systems with one song, one flag, and one kind of people was always actually just a fiction. But this is not about how we live. It is that we're living in a global world where we're having global and international experiences and global awarenesses. What it does allow us is to be with people and act on an informed basis, which is here what the literacy is all about. It's about managing information in a way that we do not come out looking uneducated, as if we just came out from a little village. So it's very important. So the language variation expose students to different language variations, and do not worry that at the age of 5 they will start speaking English with a variation. I will assure you they don't. They have so many billions and billions of brain cells in their little heads they can manage Chopin, let alone a dialect. Right? That's fine. It's fine with them. That's what happens when you're 53. You can't manage that much because you have already shortcuts in your head and you removed the flexibility, because the flexibility was actually disturbing. is disturbing an older person because we don't need it anymore. We need actually fast highways. But students and children don't have highways. What they have, it's a lot of village roads, right? A lot of them, a lot of little paths, a lot of little mud huts everywhere, little, in their heads, um, little streets, little um, paths, right? And they can walk anywhere and get anywhere. Um, so it's okay. They can cope with it. In fact, that's how they live until at least the age of 11. So, so that's just about the language variations that we just pulled out from the curriculum. Then we looked at all other things, and you will find them all in here. What did we do here? So when students actually have access to diversity of text, diversity of ways of speaking English, diversity of symbols, what's happening now is the community, the comprehension of the community in which they live, and therefore the interlocutors is growing. So when they approach a person who appears to be a native speaker of English, they don't think of them that they know nothing. They think of them that they are people who have had an exposure to diversity of Englishes, diversity of people, diversity of frames of references, right? So if we expand their world, as we do here, their cultural frames of references grow. So when they think of the people they are engaging with, they no longer define them narrowly. They also have more tools to play with. So the more they learn here, the more they can apply when they interact with people. So they can actually develop new genres. That's the sort of thing we'll be talking about later on, right? So they can actually have more tools to play with when they actually act with people. But let me just read here. So you can refer to other texts to assist the child and you yourself to make comparisons between dialects, between different models, different symbols, and all of that. So the child grows to understand the community is diverse, draws on diversity, their lives are expanded. And the experiences, their lived experiences on which they draw now are expansive and go beyond a single text, right? So the meaning is not in a text. Look at this, how much I talk just about one word. The idea, if you were to understand this text just by reading it, you know that would not happen. Right? And the same happens to a child in the classroom. Very often teachers come with that big book. That's the idea from the 16th century. And also from the monk culture of education. We only had one book, which was the Bible. We all studied the Bible and we all read the Bible. In fact, what was happening, we didn't read the Bible. What was happening with the Bible is the same as it is happening in school, which is the meaning of the Bible had to be always verified by the priest, right? So you couldn't just read the Bible, it had to have been verified by the priest. So that's what happens with the big book. The meaning that children create about the big book has to be verified by the teacher. Otherwise, we tell them they didn't construct the right meaning. All of that. It is actually about pushing children to one way of looking at the world. It's not actually any merging that Vygotsky was talking about. Mind you, Vygotsky was a long time ago, so we're not going to revive him. But it's not even that. It's really worse. It's actually preventing play. Preventing play and creativity, let alone preventing students from building actually an understanding of the world of today. And that's what we actually finished, kind of more or less. We looked at, so I asked our students, so who is, not now we know what is the community, but who is your child? So we knew that we were doing all this diversity exploration because the audience is diverse, and also even if the audience was not diverse in a sense of, in a simple way, how we think of diversity. We're all diverse, put it this way, right? I don't have to be from Poland for you to think that your teacher is, from a different culture. Everybody has, culture is not actually, the boundary of culture is not delimited by language. So let me leave it there, okay? So the idea that culture and language are synonymous, that's a nonsense again. That's something that came from the 19th century and whatever. Anyway, so where were we? So we know that now she does all of that work. We do all this work with our students, or in order to for a child to actually know that she lives in a big world. But what, in terms of a personal capability, what is happening? Who is the child? What is the child learning? Not just that the community is big, but she herself is a 21st century child, lives in a global world where internationalization is one of the key concerns. It's not going away. And her friends come from everywhere. One friend has a father who is a dentist, has a mother who is something else, has a mother who is, I don't know, a cook, has a mother who is, runs a restaurant. Different. Everybody is different. Comes from different corners of the world, but at the same time, job-wise are different, do different things. So we have legitimized people's pasts and people's frames of reference, the diversity. We've legitimized the diversity, and we actually are creating a context when looking at reading a book to children, where the child no longer, through readings, learns about herself only through her reference to her mother or the teacher, as if they were just placeholders for the priest, right? The child now learns, not necessarily learns to be a critical participant, that she actually has options, that there is a big world that she can critically build on those different frames of reference. And it's that bigger world that in fact is her world, not just mom, not just the teacher. So not just one word, not just one word that actually judges her whether she's good or bad. There's a community, and you will see that through our classes that we will have later on, I will be talking about literacy and community very strongly, and we've already started a bit, right? Because literacy doesn't live in the teacher. The literacy doesn't live in the book. The literacy is in the world. It's out there. And we engage we use literacy in order to engage this world. So this is something you might see here straight away. So you will say, what's this, Anya, about? Well, as we looked through here, somewhere, I can't remember where, you will find it, because as I'm talking, it's really hard to read at the same time. There's somewhere which says, well, what you have to consider the process of reading or something like that. I might just find it. Or here it is. Purpose and audience. You see, reading processes. Well, what's the reading process? I ask our students. Well, what is it? It's inclusive. It is considerate of it, or considering, or considerate. It considers the child's environment and the child's needs as a result, right? The child needs to relate to diversity, not to see diversity as a threat or as them people. Now, obviously, when you work with assignment 1 and you talk about your literacy experiences in which you currently engage and how, what you will find out that lots of this is actually not happening between you and your daughter, or maybe in your daily life. If we put here things like, I engage on Facebook on a daily basis, and you might actually not be able to cover all these connections and so on. Maybe this assignment will ask you to reflect critically, and it does, to reflect critically what could be a better use of Facebook, or what could be, what else one can do, and in what context maybe, in, or, in order to actually engage with the framework here, which is the the priorities, and with the capabilities. So the assignment is not necessary. It is definitely, the assignment is not about outlining. I read books, I write books, and I write poems, and I do all kinds of things. This, you don't need ELA 200 to do that. ELA 200 teaches you how to work with the curriculum and how to work with it in a way so that your children or your students actually have a chance, or not have a chance, but this is just a really bad way to put it, that your students can benefit from that, from the learning activities you will engage them with, so that they can become critical participants in the knowledge society. And we are living in a knowledge society, and you can see it on a daily basis. Manufacturing is going away, and people who actually do thinking and work with what's called white industry, in white industry jobs, actually there's plenty of those jobs here in Australia, much less manufacturing jobs. And last point I wanted to make is language for social interaction. Another thing was there in the curriculum. Well, didn't we just show it? We showed that language for social interaction. What does it mean? It was here to, what did we say? To, where was it? To relate. Okay, so here, to educate, to pass knowledge, to entertain. We did other things. To sensitize to diversity. Yeah, and so on. So we had actually quite a lot of um, purposes here outlined throughout our meeting today to show that language is actually used for social interaction, and what kinds of them. So what the point I wanted to make today, that a well-designed, a well thought through assignment 1 might actually have maybe just one activity, like for instance I read books, but really truly well explored and you could use for it the outcomes in the English strand, which are here, and you use them as checklist. So you have identified some things here in relation to the capabilities and priorities, and then you can do what we did. Oh my God, language variation. Where will we put language variation? Okay, we'll put it here because it means a range of text. It's the range, right? So it's a range. So we put it here. And why do we use it? So that students develop an understanding that there's more than one way of actually using English, and it allows us to actually think of our interlocutors not as bad speakers of English or whatever we might be, like say for example me, but that's how life is. That's how life is when you speak 5 languages like me, or 6 languages, and it's just there's a limit of time that people like me have to master them to the point that we're native and have no accents in them. So we basically legitimize diversity, legitimize variation. In fact, what we also do, we teach students to play with variation, right? So that's gonna come later in another, for assignment 2. But yes, so this is basically assignment 1. well explored, even just one activity that gives me confidence. You can actually work with the curriculum. You can engage everything as opposed to just speak of, I do indigenous text and I do only this, right? No, you actually, I would like you to give me confidence. You can work with the curriculum. You can actually explore an activity through those outcomes, which is the capability and priority outcomes, and also through the outcomes in here. And the last thing I wanted to say, this is not the end of the assignment 1, right? What will happen, we will have week 2, and we will have week 3, and then we will have week 4. And as we go through lectures and as we go through tutorials, you will get more clues, more things to put in. So start putting in things now in your literacy activity, build it up in a way that actually I can read, not as badly as I did it in here, but keep the table. The table is great. Organize your information within the table. Keep adding things as we progress through it, and it will be an amazing structure for you to actually look at your one activity as it relates to the curriculum, and it can actually provide you with some guidelines for assignment 2, as we will be thinking of how to turn all of this that we're learning now, how can we draw on it in order to create units of work. Anyway, but that's assignment 2. We're not going there at the moment. So I think that this was quite comprehensive, so I wish you all the best with this, and I meet you all on line on Friday the 11th of March, and I hope you'll be able to see this until then. Okay, thank you.